Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking math for business and finance and math applications. And we are working on the drill problems. Actually, it's the optional problem, and this one is number 4. And if you watched the last video for optional problem number 3, you saw that it took a full 10 minutes to do this one particular problem. So number 4 is basically the same exact thing. It's good for you to go through it. And like I said, I'm going to do the work here, but I'm not going to write down absolutely everything. Watch the previous video to take my complete thoughts on what you should be doing for these standard deviation problems and how to go about doing them. So in this video, I'm just going to work through the problem. And if you don't understand the process, like I said, watch the previous video. And then if you still don't understand, telephone an instructor. Emailing is not going to cut it when it comes to trying to explain standard deviation. Okay, you'll have to telephone and speak with someone. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to find the mean. And the mean is nothing more than the average of all of that data. Now, before I started this video, I actually added all of those up, and that came out to 502. And there's 12 data points, 6 here and 6 here. So I divide that by 12, and that gives me a mean of 41.83. Okay. So this is my data. Okay, and then what I do is I need to find the deviation. Okay, and remember the deviation is the deviation from the mean, so that's the data minus the mean. So the deviation of that particular data point from the mean. All right. Now, so I'm not going to go through all of this. All right. But I'm going to do one as an example, and then you could do the rest. All right. And I'll treat this as more like a checkpoint kind of thing. Okay, so like for example, all of this data ended up being 502. You should be able to add all of those up, divide by 12, and end up with a mean of 41.83. So now I take each data point, so 41 minus 41.83, and that means I end up with a minus 0.83. I'm going, I do the same thing again for the next data point, 41 minus 41.83, I get minus 0.83. Okay, so then I take 38 minus 41.83, and I get minus 3.83, and so on and so forth. Okay, I do, each and every one of these here data points, right? And what I'm going to end up with is I'm going to end up with a list of the deviations for that data. Okay, so whatever that comes out to, okay, I'm going to have a list of these deviations. Okay, whatever they are, for all 12 of these numbers. Okay, now that's the next step. This following step is I take the data, those deviations, and I'm going to square them, meaning I'm going to multiply that number by itself. So that looks like this: the data minus the mean squared, or the deviation squared. Okay, so you're going to have 12 deviations here, and you're going to square each one, so you're going to have 12 of them over here also, right? Different values. Now, when you have these deviations all squared, you're going to add them up. So that's going to be the sum of the deviation, deviation squared. Okay, And that total, so use this as a checkpoint, is 1,224. Okay. So if for some reason you don't get to this 1,224, that means you made a mistake someplace else. So go back and check it. Okay. Now, once we have the 1,224, we're going to divide it by the number of data points less 1. Well, we know our number of data points is 12. So 12 minus 1 is now 11. So I take my 1,224 and I divide it by 11, and I end up with 111.272727, and on and on and on. Okay, that's a repeating number. So for our final step, to get the standard deviation, we take a square root of that. And when we take the square root of that, we end up with actually 10.5 as our standard deviation. Okay. Now remember, to get the standard deviation, all you're doing in a very simple calculator is you're punching the number in. So I would punch in, I take if I'm doing this, I'm going to take 1224, divide it by 11, and that number is going to be the 111.272727 is already going to be in my calculator in the display. And then all I'm going to do is hit the square root button, and that gives me that standard deviation. It actually ended up being 10.548588, but because I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I only need 10.5 as my standard deviation. Okay, all right. So even though I didn't do all of that math, that took me 7 minutes to explain. Okay, so with that, it's just the repetitive math. And like I said, if you're not understanding this, go back to the previous video or go back to the theory videos and watch them again and again, because it's just a process, step-by-step process of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. If you don't understand the process, feel free to telephone and speak with an instructor, but they're going to hand walk you through exactly what I've done in the videos. Okay, so if you need that additional help, feel free to telephone, but do not email, because you can't really explain standard deviation by doing email. It took me 10 minutes just to do this in a video format. Could you imagine what it would be like if I had to write what's already in the book, okay, in an email? Take forever, and you'd be, you wouldn't sit and read through it. Okay, so telephone and speak with an instructor if you need that additional help. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop. Okay, and I will move on. Well, I'm not going to stop. I mean, we're done with the drill problems. We're going to be working on the word problems next. And just as we had the regular word problems, there's going to be optional word problems, and I'm going to do the optional word problems also. Right? With this chapter, you can't get enough practice. All right, so even though you were only assigned the odd-numbered problems, if you were smart enough to be watching these videos, take advantage of what I'm telling you now, because a lot of people would not do the optional problems, and they're shortchanging themselves. Okay, so I will be seeing you all in the word problems in the next series of videos.